Hello, welcome to part 2 of my foundations revealed journey. In this video I'm going to be making a corset. This is foundation garment number 2 and is the second closest layer to the skin. So corsets, as we all know, are what determines the final silhouette of the whole outfit. So this should be fun to figure out exactly how to make it do what I want it to do. Corsets are one of my favorite things to make. I'm super excited to get started. So with that, let's do it. So I'll be making a corset that's heavily based on this corset from the Met. It's an 1891 corset from a French corset maker. I think the company actually still makes athletic wear now. I've been pretty fascinated with this corset since I saw it. I made a version of it once for a class my first year of grad school, and while I think this is a really beautiful corset, there's a lot of issues with it. So there's a lot that needs to be reworked. Oh, it's upside down. Mainly that this was made for a classmate of mine who is a lot less extreme in her measurements. She's got a bit of a smaller bust and shorter torso as well. So while it will fit my body kind of, it doesn't really have the same effect that this corset does. The classmate also had pretty severe scoliosis, so I wasn't able to get as much of the compression as I wanted, which is just something that you gotta consider when you have somebody with health issues. I don't have personally any health issues that would restrict me from corseting down really small, and I'm very squishy generally, so I'm hoping that I can get a lot more waist compression and a more dramatic shape like this one has, whereas this one is a little bit less dramatically curved. So I've got some lines taped out for this corset, which I think look pretty good, but they need a little bit of work. This is just kind of a preliminary taping out, and I have a couple patterns that I want to compare this to. So this is option 1 for making this pattern. I have 2 other options. This is option number 2. This is a German pattern that I found from Pinterest. The girl who made it looks amazing wearing it. The corset looks incredible, so I thought I would give it a try and compare it to my current pattern and to whatever patterns I can find in books. So if you can see, this has I think 5 different patterns on one sheet, which is how a lot of older patterns used to be printed. Thankfully has stopped being the practice now because it's really hard to figure it out. And so essentially what I did is I stared at a picture of this girl wearing this corset, and I found what I thought would be most likely to be a corset piece. So number 40 was the one I found first, and then because patterns in generally, they'll be labeled in consecutive numbers, right? So I kind of started at 40 and I looked for 39 and 41 and thought that those look pretty much like gusset shapes. So I just kept going from there. So 42 was this shape. And then I compared it to the picture of the girl to see if it looked correct. And it does. This piece right here is very clearly on the front of the corset. So I was able to find all of the pieces that I think belong to this. When I went past 45, 46 is somewhere up here, but it's a different outline as well. So all of the shapes that go together will be outlined in the same way. So these all had solid line outlines, whereas a lot of these have dotted outlines. So I just went down and up as far as I thought would be included. And then I kind of figured out that once I found this front piece, that was probably the first piece that they made in this because, front to back. And then when I found the back pieces, 44 and 45, this is clearly a back piece, and then this is a gusset piece. So that was kind of how I figured that out. And then I scaled it up. I measured what I believe is the center front, and it's about 3.5 inches on this small thing. And then to scale it up to 14 inches, which would be about correct for my center front bust to where it would go down to on the hips, would scale up by 400%. So that's what I've got here. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape all of these together, and then I'm going to find the corresponding pieces on here and cut them out, and that will be my pattern piece. My third option I don't have yet, and that's going to be Nora Waugh's Corsets and Crinolines. I think there's a similar pattern in that just from doing some research. But once that's here, I should be able to check that pattern. Then we can just go from there. If these patterns are really similar, I think mostly this is what I was trying to achieve here. The main difference for this pattern versus this corset, there's one gusset here, and then this is also part of that panel there, whereas on this one it's done a little bit differently where it doesn't have the little small gusset. It's got some bigger gussets that
span farther. Sorry if that doesn't make any sense. But I'm going to compare these patterns, see if I can kind of mash them all together, since that seems to be the best way to do this. Yeah, so that's my plan for the corset so far. Just kind of feel it out and hope that it works.
For the corset, I've gotten the pattern mostly done. It still needs a couple of tweaks, but I think I can start cutting today. So I've decided to mostly go with the pattern from the Gracieuse. I don't speak French, but the pattern from the magazine. I guess it's a French magazine, not a German magazine. I found it on a German website. But essentially, I altered this pattern a little bit, and I compared it to my draped pattern, and I think instead of using the draped pattern, I really like the shape that all of the people who have made it on the internet have gotten. It needs maybe a little bit more hip spring flare, so I'm going to add that in there. But other than that, I think it's very good, and I'm going to just stick with that with the alterations I've made. I've made the gussets look a little bit more like the source material, but you know. So for that, I have this fabric, which I think is a cotton, so it's not a silk. I don't know. Let's light it on fire and find out. Oops. Oh, I need scissors. No, I'll just use this. This is fine. Okay. I'll just take a little piece of this. Try the fun experiment. Okay, well, it doesn't smell like burning hair, so it's definitely not silk. Try again. Yeah, it smells like burning paper. This is cotton. Great. So I'm going to be using this blue striped cotton, which I think is super cute, and also is like vaguely reminiscent of my first one, which is a pink striped one. So I'm going to use this blue striped. I need to find a cotton sateen to use for backing this. That's what I used in the original one, was just like a nice tight weave cotton sateen. And I'd rather use that than corset coutil, just because coutil can get like really stiff and heavy, and I want this one to be able to like flow really nicely. Like, obviously it won't be flowy because it's not a dress and it's a structured garment. I want it to be a little less hefty. So that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna go look for a cotton sateen, and then I can get to cutting these pieces. The outer layer of the corset is all done. The next thing to do is to thread trace all of these pieces before they can get put together. I just have to thread trace the boning channels by hand so that when this is all put together and then like all of the markings are hidden on the inside, I can still see it. So that's what I'm probably going to spend like the next few hours doing.
got my 2 layers done and like basically all attached. It's just the center back seam that still needs to be done. So I'm gonna do that, flip that inside out. And then the next step after that I'm gonna do is a little bit optional. Basically what I'm going to be doing, this gets basted in the seams, so basically stitch in the ditch with a hand basting seam, and then they get stitched by machine in the seams, and that makes sure that everything is very even and stays in place when you then do the boning channels. And then from there I can just cut boning and go ahead and put them all together, do the grommets, and it sounds very simple, but there's so much still left to do. At this point, there's really no turning back because I've done an edge stitch on every seam and I've trimmed it down really close. So at this point, if I wanted to make any alterations, it would be a huge pain and I'd have to entirely replace a panel in order to do so. So hopefully this fits. And I'm thinking I'm going to do a synthetic whalebone. On the original image, you can see where the boning channels are, like where the boning ends. There's no lump at the bottom. If you use a spiral steel boning, you can see where there's like a little extra lump where the tip goes on. Spiral steels all have to be capped with a boning cap, and these are just really flat looking. This is my big box of corset supplies. It's got all my stuff like my boning and a busk and some more boning and grommets. We're gonna be starting on boning now. I've gotten all of the boning channels in here, so yay for that. It looks wrinkly, but I promise it'll look nice once the boning channels are in there, since, you know, that's, or once the boning is in there, since that's kind of the point of boning. I'll just like measure everything down and then I will chop it all up, and then you just file down the ends. I think I have one. Here we go. You just file down the ends with like a metal file and go like this and this and this and this, so that it makes it nice and round, so it's easy to get into the boning channel, unlike when it's this sad blunt end which will snag on all the threads. I use like these big yellow aviation snips to cut all the boning, and it just makes it go super easy. This is the file that I have, pretty standard. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna get started on, and cutting boning takes a while, so that's what I'll be doing for a while. Channels in. I've done the stitching on the top and the bottom of each of the boning channels so that the bones don't slide out of there, and it's very like kind of weird and wavy right now. Eventually that'll get better as I wear it because the whalebone will kind of form to my body heat. Next I'm going to be doing the grommets, and this is my grommet punch right here. Sorry, this is going to be blinding for a second because of my softbox, but it's a really big grommet punch. It goes like that. I am more used to the kick punch, which is what we had at school, but this is only like $70, whereas the kick punch is like $350. So we're going with this. The die that I have on there right now is for cutting the holes. And then I've also got the die for, where did that go? These are the dies for actually punching the grommets, and this one goes on the bottom. This one will go on top, and they just kind of fit together like that, so they can punch your grommets together really nice and neatly. This is my sample. It turned out really clean. There's no splits in the grommets, so I think it's at a good tension. And you can kind of adjust that with this spring, but I don't need to for this, so we're just gonna leave it how it is. So please excuse my like high ponytail. I feel like I look like a saloon girl. I think maybe I might need to pad out the bust a little tiny bit just because it's feeling a little bit hollow in some parts, but that's okay. That's expected because I did exaggerate the bust quite a bit. The other thing that is like interesting about this pattern that is not something I'm used to in corsets, there's like a lot of space for my belly. Like
it's not really super flush against my body right here, and like there's more space in like the kind of belly area that I'm used to, whereas it's like very tight back here. I guess normally I'm more used to like a very straight front that doesn't curve out, but that kind of makes sense for the time period. I just thought that was a very interesting difference between normal like modern corsets and like this kind of historical corset. So I think that we're pretty good and ready to go on to adding the binding and the lace that goes on top. I just wanted to double check the fit, make sure everything looked okay before I moved on, and I think it does, so I don't really think there needs to be any adjustments, which is good because I don't think I could take this apart and make adjustments even if I wanted to, so that's awesome. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop those in the comments below. If you want to see the rest of this series, then think about subscribing maybe. It helps me out, me and my channel out, and I just really appreciate it. Yeah, leave a comment. I want to talk to everybody. I mostly started YouTube so I could make new friends and have something to do while I'm still in isolation. So I would love to hear from you guys, and I hope you guys got something out of this video. I hope it was helpful, introduced you to a new source of patterns maybe. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys did too, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
So I have my computer set up here so that Baby Bat doesn't climb all over it all the time. So instead she's climbing under it.